Hello, how are you? How is everybody doing? Oh, it looks a little bit funny, doesn't it? Maybe that's my camera. Let me just do something. There we go. How is everybody doing? Welcome today. Today I'm going to be talking about stress, acute stress, and the effects it has on your hormones, and just a few of your hormones. I'm going to talk about actually what happens during the process of stress and acute stress, and what it's for, and then what it might be doing to our other hormones, such as testosterone, such as estrogen, such as aldosterone, and progesterone as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So when we get stressed, essentially what our body does, it's kind of like that fight or flight response, and what our body does is it initiates our hormones, our stress response hormones, which we've got adrenaline and we've also got cortisol. And the reason it does that, and it does that for simply so that we can run away from a fright, we can save ourselves, we can fight if we need to. So really the process is the adrenaline kind of shuts down the digestive function, shuts down our immune system, shuts down our digestive system, our metabolic system gets shut down, and essentially all the blood and nutrients get put into our muscles, ready for us to fight or run away. And you might notice when you're in a stressed state that you perceive things as well differently. So you're also more alert. So you're more alert to noises, you're more alert to visuals, you can pick up on things, heightened senses. So you'll have all of that. And then what you might notice as well is your muscles might get tense, or you might get the jitters afterwards. And it's normal to sort of feel the jitters afterwards. You know, when you've got those adrenaline pumping through your body. I was watching, I've been watching the World Cup, and I'm an England supporter, and I was watching the game last week when England were playing Colombia, and it was such a tense game. And what I noticed sitting there is, because it's so tense, you're getting kind of that flush, that rush of adrenaline go through your body. And what the adrenaline does is it sits in your muscles, and that can kind of cause the muscle aches, and it can cause you to feel really tense and really tight. And so what I did while I was watching the game is I actually stood up and I started bouncing my feet on the floor and flicking my muscles like this, because what essentially that does, it helps to release the adrenaline from the body. Because what my body is going through is it's going through that fight or should I run away kind of process, and all I'm doing is watching the Football World Cup. And so it's your body's getting yourself ready to run away, and all the adrenaline's in the muscles. And so I had to try and do something to kind of get rid of that adrenaline, because it was stuck there, it was stuck in the muscles. So that's actually a good one for people that get stressed and tense a lot of the time due to this heightened sense and this heightened overreactivity of the adrenal glands. You go into that heightened high adrenaline, high cortisol. It's good to actually knock the adrenaline out of your muscles. A lot of people find the adrenaline sits in their heart muscles, which can be pretty difficult. And when it sits in these muscles around the heart, you feel like you've got a tight chest, you feel like you've got those heart palpitations all the time. So that's where helping adrenaline to get out of your body can be very, very helpful for those people that suffer from acute or chronic stress. And so what causes stress? Well, in this day and age, there's a lot of things that cause stress, and it's not what it used to be, where we used to be chased after by some kind of animal that wanted to eat us. Our stress response goes when we eat food we're intolerant to, like dairy and gluten. Our stress response goes when we have a fright. Our stress response goes when it activates, I should say, when we get sick, when we've got an illness, when we've got a cold, when we've got a flu. Toxins in our environment will activate our stress response. Also blood sugar fluctuations. So if you get low blood sugar, hypoglycemic, so you go low blood sugar, adrenaline will be initiated and your stress response will be activated. And what's happening there, and this is why a lot of people wake up at that kind of 3 a.m. mark. If your blood sugar has dropped out, your body will wake you up kind of around that 3 a.m. mark. That adrenaline will go and get glycogen stores. and what it will do is bring the glycogen out of your muscles, and it will put glucose into your blood. And the reason it's putting glucose into your blood is it's readying your body to run or do what it needs to do. And so the glucose is essentially energy. And so that's what's happening. And a lot of people find that they wake up at 3 a.m. It could just be because their blood sugar is dropping, or it could be anxiety. So that's what's going on there. And so what essentially happens in that moment of time is all your body is prioritizing. All your body is prioritizing is essentially the workings of it to get away, to fight, to do what it has to do physically. So when you've got that stress response, whether it be a stress response because you're in way of harm or you're in danger, your body doesn't know if the stress response is danger or the stress response is just eating gluten. Your body doesn't really differentiate between the two. And so this is why the stress response is so important. And this is why so many people are having problems, because some people are having chronic stress responses multiple times a day, when really we should only be having a stress response when we really need that stress response. Because what happens when we have the stress response, our bodily functions, like manual functions to run, are prioritized. Our muscles are prioritized. So nutrients, blood are taken away from the digestive area. And this is why people can get IBS, they can get constipation, they can get diarrhea with a stress response. Hey Jess, how's it going? Thanks for joining. How are you? When people have the stress response, they might feel it in their gut. When people have the stress response, they also might feel it in their metabolic system. So what essentially is happening with the stress response, blood and nutrients are getting sent to the muscles. And so you might find your peripherals, your fingers, your feet, your toes get all cold because your veins get constricted, and your veins get constricted out of here. So you might get cold hands and feet, you might get clammy hands and feet, and your muscles get prioritized. So that is what happens. Also, in a chronic stress response, an acute stress response, your fertility gets shut down. So you can imagine what happens if you're a woman and you've got chronic stress response or acute stress responses happening day in, day out. Your fertility will get affected. So that is what's happening there. And then metabolic processes. When you're having a stress response, when your cortisol is high and when your adrenaline is high, it will affect your thyroid gland, and it will start to slow down those metabolic functions. So essentially think of a chronic stress response. Your body doesn't know whether it's just about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Is that, I think, a saber-toothed tiger? Is that the word? Or it doesn't know if you've been exposed to heavy metals, or you've been exposed to wheat when you're wheat intolerant. So you can see how this is causing a little bit of a problem. Hi Erin, how are you? So cold hands and feet, can be this chronic stress response because you're not getting blood and nutrients to the hands and feet. Now sometimes it can be as simple as low zinc or low magnesium. Magnesium in particular can help, and I'll tell you why magnesium can help in a minute, because magnesium is very important when you're having a chronic or acute stress response. But definitely low magnesium, low zinc, general low metabolic function. But if you feel like you're stressed or your body's going through an acute stress response daily, then it won't give you a chance for your hands and feet to warm up so they can stay cold. And it is cold at the moment, but you shouldn't feel it all the time. Your body should be able to withstand a little bit of cold and keep itself warm and toasting. So an acute stress response can happen, like I say, through the day with small things. It can happen with a traumatic event, and it's okay to let your body go through that stress response, particularly if you go through a trauma. But it's all about coming down from that stress response. Now what we do find is that people that do go through a trauma, over the next sort of 6 to 10 months after a particular trauma, especially if they're suffering with post-traumatic stress syndrome, there can be issues ongoing for that kind of like 6 to 10 months with the immune system. There can be issues ongoing for 6 to 10 months with the digestive system. So it's about coming down from that stress. But definitely if you're going through these small daily stresses and they're mounting up over time, they're kind of mounting up to cause this one big stress. Now what can happen during this time is a number of different things with your hormones. So these are really interesting things that happen, and I think sometimes we kind of forget that they happen. But when we get stressed, I wanted to try and show you my hormone thing, but I don't think you can see my hormone thing. This is kind of what all the hormones look like, steroid hormones look like in your body. And so when you get stressed, cortisol is kind of at the bottom of the path. And when we get stressed, our body prioritizes making cortisol. And so essentially what will happen is other hormones will be stolen from. So progesterone is one of these hormones. Progesterone is a female sex hormone. It makes you feel calm, it makes you feel comfortable, it helps you to sleep, it makes you less anxious. When we get stressed, our body will funnel and siphon from progesterone and our cortisol will get higher. So progesterone gets lower, cortisol gets higher. And this can happen acutely or it can happen chronically over time. And what this does is that this sends a hormone called aldosterone higher. Aldosterone is a hormone that regulates fluid in your body, it regulates your kidneys, it regulates water retention, it regulates sodium in your body. Here's what happens. So aldosterone regulates the fluid balance and it regulates the sodium and it regulates the potassium amounts in your body. If you've got high cortisol and low progesterone due to these acute stressors through the day, what will happen is your aldosterone will go up. That will cause you to hold on to more sodium in the cell. Then it will cause you to hold on to more water, so you get what's called fluid retention. But what it will also do, and this is where it's very important, it will also cause loss of magnesium and potassium. And magnesium we know is very, very important when we're stressed. So your body will get rid of this magnesium and this potassium, causing things like high blood pressure, anxiety, cold hands and feet, insomnia. With low potassium, you might be yawning all the time. With low potassium, you might have dry, flaky skin. With low potassium, you get fungal infections a lot of the time. With low magnesium, you get muscle cramps. With low magnesium, you get fatigued. You get memory problems. So this is what's essentially happening. And then what happens is you end up craving for more fluids. You feel thirsty all the time. You might crave salt because you're craving this fluid in this water because your body's not using the water. There's like this imbalance. There's more water in the cells where the sodium is, and you've kind of lost all your electrolytes. So it's very, very, very important to always treat the underlying cause of your stress, but you also need to treat the symptoms. So if you are going through severe, chronic, acute stress, you need to be treating your fluid and you need to be making sure that you're having the right kind of fluid with the right kind of electrolyte. So for instance, if you're going through a real if you've just been through a trauma or you've been through some acute stress, you need to work on your magnesium and potassium levels. So making sure you could do like a fresh juice, like a fresh celery juice daily, and that will help your body's aldosterone, all of those things to re-regulate. And it will help with symptoms of stress, because symptoms of stress can be fluid retention, it can be puffiness, puffy hands and feet. It can be being thirsty and dehydrated, particularly very dehydrated. So we know when people get stressed, they get even more dehydrated. And you can drink as much water as you want, but you're still more and more dehydrated. So it's about keeping those electrolytes up, keeping those fluids up, keeping your potassium up, and just making sure that you're not getting dehydrated. On the flip side, if you're burnt out, if you're in adrenal fatigue and you've got cortisol rock bottom, what you're then essentially going to have with low cortisol is you're going to be peeing a lot more. You're going to be peeing a lot more. You're actually going to be losing sodium. So if you've got low cortisol, adrenal fatigue, really fatigued, then what you need to do is you need to be having more sodium. But if you're in this acute stress phase, you need to be making sure you're having things like barley grass that are high magnesium, celery juice and things like that that are high potassium, cucumber juice, or having green smoothies to get those electrolytes up to stop the symptoms of stress in terms of the body function symptoms and the water retention. So you definitely need to do that. So that's what happens with aldosterone, and then that's what happens with progesterone. So normally when you're stressed, your body will start to funnel and it will start to steal progesterone. Another hormone that it steals is pregnenolone. Pregnenolone can either turn into your stress hormones, it can turn into progesterone, or it can turn into DHEA, and then DHEA can turn into testosterone, or it can turn into estrogen, depending on what your methylation in your body does. And so what can tend to happen when we've got super high cortisol is we can actually get problems with DHEA, and then we can get problems with our other hormones, testosterone. But what also happens with stress and acute stress and estrogen is we find that estrogen elevates in acute stress. So progesterone lowers and estrogen elevates. And because progesterone lowers, then what you're going to see and what you're going to experience is estrogen dominant symptoms. So you're going to experience the sore swollen breasts, you might experience the facial flushing, you might experience hair loss, you might experience heavy painful periods, you might experience acne. And that's really because a couple of things are going on. The progesterone's lowered, so you're feeling those symptoms more. But get this, high cortisol on a stress response, when you get stressed, the cortisol triggers fat storage, namely fat storage in the tummy area. The more fat we have, the more synthesis of estrogen. So the more fat we have, the more likely we are to become estrogen dominant. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. And then when we're estrogen dominant, that will cause more estrogen, and then we kind of have those more, we have the high estrogen to the low progesterone, and then we have those really severe symptoms. So what's essentially happening is we've got high cortisol, we've got low progesterone, we've got high estrogen, and then we also have a misbalance of DHEA and testosterone as well. And so you'll have the symptoms of maybe no period. So some women don't get a period when they're stressed. They might go for months without a period. Or we've got some women on the flip side, some women who will have heavy, painful clotting periods due to stress. Stubborn weight is also a big one. Because the cortisol is triggering fat storage, what tends to happen as women go through menopause is they actually tend to put on more weight, and that is due to the stress rather than the imbalance in the estrogen and the progesterone. That's due to the stress hormone. So managing the stress is very, very important. Another thing cortisol does when it's high in our system due to stress, so cortisol elevates, is it lowers our metabolic rate. And by that what I mean, our metabolic rate is how our thyroid runs our whole body like a beautiful engine. It keeps us warm, it keeps us happy, it keeps us energized through the day, it keeps our weight down, it regulates our digestion, it regulates our mood and our endorphins. And what this pesky high cortisol does is it binds the hormones, and so we have all these bound hormones running around in our body, not able to bind to their very own receptors. And so then what essentially that happens with thyroid hormones. High cortisol, it binds to the thyroid hormones, and so these thyroid hormones cannot activate at site. So that causes low metabolic rate. It can cause constipation long term, skin problems, low iron. It can cause low zinc and low magnesium because our body's not absorbing, it's not synthesizing and doing what it needs to the other hormones, and also our minerals as well. So we could be eating the healthiest diet ever, but if we've got this elevated cortisol, the nutrients and the electrolytes are just going to be going straight through us. We're not going to be using them to the best ability they can be used, and they're going to be going straight through our body. So you can see how this pesky cortisol that is high can cause so many different problems with hormones in our body. And like I said before, cortisol doesn't have to be high because you've been through a trauma. Cortisol can be high because your pituitary is not functioning as well as it should be. Your adrenals haven't got enough vitamin C. You are eating foods you're sensitive to. You're naturally anxious because you've got low zinc. Or maybe you just are feeling anxious through the day, and that's causing kind of like this trauma, this internal trauma to rise, which causes the cortisol to rise. I actually did a Facebook Live on the negativity bias, and what we know is the higher our cortisol is, the more likely are we to perceive danger around us. So we're less likely to do things that we want to do. We're less likely to see things as safe. We're less likely to socialize with strangers. We're less likely to go on dates if our cortisol is high, because we can see the bad in everything. We can see where an accident might happen. We can see where something might go wrong. We can see where there's a risk. So elevated cortisol affects so many different areas of our life, our health, our body, our mental emotions, but also how we perceive the world around us and how we interact with the world around us. So it is really important, and we know that high cortisol causes blood sugar problems, it causes inflammation, blood pressure problems, it causes belly fat storage, purple stretch marks, acne, candida is one, hair loss, bruising, headaches, I'm thinking, breakdown of connective tissues, so sort of aging, that kind of thing, breakdown of bone, osteoporosis. So it does cause a lot of different things, and we want to have a beautiful balance of cortisol. So what can you do? I mean, generally with cortisol, it is one of the hardest ones. It's easier to bring it up than it is to take it down, because our bodies are so sensitive to things, and our bodies can be really sensitive to us taking things for cortisol. What you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be taking things that are going to be elevating your cortisol in terms of those really, those stimulating herbs. You want to be careful with stimulating herbs. You want to be careful with licorice, because they can put the cortisol up. But what we want to do is we want to treat the symptoms, and then we also want to treat the cause. So if you've got high cortisol, you want to be making sure that you're having a high potassium and magnesium diet, low sodium diet, and that's going to start to treat the cause. So that looks like barley grass in water a couple of times a day. That looks like a celery juice. That looks like a cucumber juice. That looks like a green smoothie. That looks like a beautiful vegetable soup with no salt added. You can also take, there's a wonderful supplement from Blackmores. It's a celluloid, PPMP. It's magnesium coupled with potassium. They're little chewable tablets, and you chew a couple of them a day, and that will help with the symptoms of high cortisol. So that's treating the symptoms, not necessarily the cause, but it's treating the symptoms. And the higher we get our magnesium, the more likely we are to bring cortisol down. But what you want to do first is you want to work on your lifestyle. Obviously, you want to work on things that are going to help to bring oxytocin up, help to bring serotonin up, and naturally that will push your cortisol down. So that would look like using massage, using meditation, using quiet time. The two things I found best to bring cortisol down is eating very, very slowly. So eating slowly, and deep breathing. So in for 3 seconds, hold, out for 3 seconds, hold. Hi, Erin. I'm glad I've reminded you. Yeah, email me with a question. So in for 3 seconds and out for 3 seconds. Now, doing things slowly is one of the best ways to reset your body. If you're one of these people that tend to do things fast, you're in a rush all the time and you're doing things fast and it's like that's giving your body the wrong message. It's all what we do, what we think, but also what we do gives our body the message. So if we do slow, what our body will then get is, I'm safe. I'm not being chased. I'm not in danger. And slowly that will rebalance your nervous system. So talking slowly, breathing slowly, socializing slowly. So when someone is talking to you, sitting, listening, not thinking, listening. So not thinking about when you're going to respond. Listen, break, respond. And just kind of notice how these ebbs and flows of conversation, of how you're doing things, how you're being in your day, the slowness. It doesn't mean everything will slow down. It doesn't mean you won't get things done, because slow doesn't mean slow as in you're not doing things, but it just means you'll notice it in your nervous system. So those are definitely very good lifestyle changes you can make. The breathing and the eating slowly, the interacting slowly also will help your nervous system. Quiet time with affirmation. So if you're a really anxious person, and you know your cortisol's high, you don't sleep and you have heart palpitations, as well as getting up your magnesium and your potassium for your heart palpitations. Heart palpitations can be dehydration, so just be aware of that, and bicarbonate of soda as well. So sometimes you may need to take a little bit of bicarb to get your electrolytes back up. Bicarb can help with heart palpitations, and normally if we're peeing a lot because of stress, I actually know this, I actually know this because back in 2014, it was Christmas 2014, it was really, really hot. And from April 2014 to December 2014, I had got into a little bit of a bad habit. Well, it wasn't a bad habit, but it wasn't suiting me health-wise. I was getting up at 3:30 every morning, and I was having bulletproof coffee from 3:30, and I was reading a book for half an hour, doing affirmations, and I was having coffee, and I was working from 3:30 in the morning at my desk with coffee all the way through to 11 a.m. and then I would go off and do work. And so I was doing this every day. Anyway, week before Christmas, I'm sat at my desk and I'm sweating because my desk is by the window. The sun was coming through. It was a really hot day in Sydney, and I started getting these heart palpitations. Heart palpitations that come in just where your tummy is. Couldn't stop. So I eventually had to go to emergency. And after a while it started to go. But what they noticed, this is interesting, what they noticed was I was so dehydrated and so low in bicarb in my blood. I think they took 1.5 liters. I think they gave me 1.5 liters. My body just took that 1.5 liters of fluid up, and I felt fantastic. But it just goes to show your body gets so dehydrated when you're stressed. You will either hold on to fluid, or you'll lose those electrolytes. You'll lose the bicarb, you'll lose the magnesium, you'll lose the potassium. So if you know you're particularly anxious, stressed, you get the heart palpitations, make sure you're getting those electrolytes and you're getting them in, because they will make such a difference for your anxiety and your symptoms of stress. Magnesium, you want to be taking about 250 milligrams a day, and that will help. You can go up. And then you also want to be looking at taking nice calming herbs, chamomile, passion flower, withania, holy basil. Don't take rhodiola, don't take ginseng, don't take damiana. You want to be taking things that are just calming, nourishing. Chamomile is wonderful, and you can use essential oils as well. They're so wonderful. You know, just rubbing essential oil into this area around your pituitary. Doing yoga moves where you've got your forehead on the ground, that resets your nervous system. It's wonderful to reset your nervous system. Doing yin kind of exercise, and of course sleeping. Sleeping is one of the most important things, because sleeping will help to reset our melatonin. And we need our melatonin to bring our cortisol down. So you know, sleep recommendations are getting more and more, but now we're looking at about definitely 8 and 9 hours sleep a night. So trying to get your sleep in is very, very important. If you don't sleep well, I encourage you to kind of work on why you're not sleeping well, and just have a look at how you might remedy that. So that might look like darkening your room. That might look at doing meditation before. It might look at making sure you get no caffeine. It might look at your diet. So just have a look at why you might not be sleeping if you think that is an issue for you. Hi, Lily. There are different types of magnesium. Which is the best type? I love your videos, but I get terrible palpitations have been put on. Oh, okay. So, Lily, there's a few different things that cause palpitations, and we've talked about the dehydration today. So dehydration will definitely cause palpitations. Magnesium amino chelate is a beautiful calming one. Orotate is more for energy for the heart, so we would use orotate, magnesium orotate, for energy, but to calm down, using something like a magnesium citrate or using an amino chelate, that will calm your muscles down, that will calm your nervous system down really, really nicely. There are lots of different brands out here. You know, Metagenics have magnesium calm powder. Bioceuticals have Ultra Muscle Night, which is a beautiful calming one. So that kind of helps to calm down. I also find that half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, one with no aluminium, done, you know, a couple of times a week, helps also with the heart muscles and just helps with the palpitations. Just on a side note as well, heart palpitations can also be caused by hormone imbalance, elevated estrogen, low progesterone, but also low iron as well is a biggie. So if you've got low iron, that can also cause a heart palpitation. So just be aware there's a few other things, but definitely the magnesium will help, and a little bit of the bicarb of soda. Honestly, it did wonders. For me, after I had it, a few weeks after I noticed it coming back, I take a little bit of bicarb and it would just go away. It was amazing. It works wonders. I'm not saying take bicarb every day. It's not an everyday food because it's quite alkalizing in the tummy acid, but it can help therapeutically. It really can help there. And then just be aware of the other things for heart palpitations. But definitely sleep is a big one. So making sure you're getting a number of hours sleep. And if you're not getting the sleep, just try and figure out why. It can be maybe you didn't eat enough carbohydrate before bedtime. Maybe you had foods that were keeping you up. Maybe you need to do meditation or deep breathing before bed, or yin yoga. Make sure your electrics are off, your mobile phone's not under your pillow. Make sure that your blinds are all darked out, and then you can use the blue light blocker glasses as well, because they will help to regulate you for sleep as well. So the reason really for this one was just to help, because I've been getting a lot of clients recently with high cortisol, and it was just to help you identify some of your symptoms. So I know some of you feel like you have a lot of water retention. Some of you feel thirsty all the time. No matter how much water you drink, it doesn't help you feel hydrated. Some of you crave a lot of salt. Some of you get the heart palpitations, feel like you're in that chronic stress response all the time. So that can be because of the high cortisol and the high adrenaline. So just do some of these tactics, do some of these, take some of these minerals, and hopefully that will help you, as well as dealing with the underlying cause of what's causing this high cortisol. So I hope that helped you today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Lily. I hope that helped you. Thanks, Erin. And Jess, thanks everyone for joining, and have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week. Bye.